started and introduce Meghan. Meghan, just so you guys know a little bit about her, Meghan is the owner of HR Navigator. And this is a company that assists businesses in developing veteran talent management strategies and implementation tools for veteran employee engagement. So she is no stranger to the veteran employment space, is an expert in that field. And so she's got some great stuff to share with us. And she's also a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, has over 20 years of leadership and operational experience. As a career naval officer, to include command ashore, overseas deployments, a tour as the director of personnel operations and training, and a tour as the financial manager of the Navy's multi-million-dollar active duty for operational support budget. And she's also been an instructor. So knows how to help others grow and be better. She earned a Master of Science degree in Global Leadership from the University of San Diego and is certified professional in HR and Society for Human Resource Management, certified professional. And she's also an expert and a practitioner in the EQ I 2.0 or the EQ 360. And she's got a lot of community stuff that she does. Married to a Marine Corps veteran, and they have 2 kids. And Meghan, you like spending time on the lake. So is there a specific lake that you enjoy?
Yeah, so we invested in a property up in Michigan. You know, I guess they don't call it the land of 1,000 lakes or whatever, but there's a lot of lakes up there, I've learned.
That's
so
awesome.
just a small all sports lake, not any of the Great Lakes, but
Phil, that sounds fantastic. My wife is she's a lover of lake life as well, and I've got some friends who I pester quite a bit who've got boats. I'm sure you've got quite a few of those friends who are like, "Hey, Meghan, hey, how's it going? Now let's get to business. Well, how's that lake property going?"
Yeah. No, we love it. We with the teenagers now, we're loving having all the kids coming up and getting them off electronics and outside, fishing and, going out on the boat, building campfires, the stuff we grew up with.
Heck yeah.
That was normal.
Raising them right. That's awesome.
We're trying.
Well, cool. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you jump in here and take the reins of this thing. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And we're excited to learn more about what you got. So I know you're going to dive us into the world of statistics and measurements and how to keep your left brain active throughout this. So I'm excited about that. Let's do it.
Everybody else is worried though, like, oh man, statistics and data. I'm turning my video off now. So.
I know Rose is into that kind of stuff. So is Mitchell. So we got some good representation.
Awesome. All right. See if I can share my screen here. Not yet. Can you make me co-host?
Yep, I can. Okay. I'll do that.
Awesome. So I'm just curious because I don't know everybody very well. Thanks, I got it now. Well, besides Dennis, I mean, I know Dennis very, very well. Well, pretty well anyways.
Not well enough to get an invite to the lake, mind you, Jake. But
well, you moved away.
Just saying.
You moved far away. It's not my fault you left Ohio. I'm just curious. So who are coaches, staff? Like, I'm not sure what role everybody has.
I am staff. Sean's staff.
Right.
Dennis would be a coach. Rose and Mitchell are participants, but also like high level.
Participants high level moving into coaching too, or?
I know, Rose, you do some coaching, right?
I am a holistic health coach. Okay. And I've actually just enrolled for my MS PhD in holistic medicine and nutrition with a focus on sports nutrition and physiology.
Nice. So I'm going to definitely connect with you because as a coach, as a high school coach with girls, always interested in that stuff. So cool.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thanks. Okay, so I think I have the ability. Yes, there we go. Let me share my screen because we can't do a presentation without PowerPoint. That would just be wrong on so many levels,
exactly.
Right? So hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. So normally I talk to employers, HRs, hiring managers about veteran employment. So Bear with me, this is a different kind of audience. So I put together a little bit different presentation for y'all because I know it's a little bit different role, whether it's participants, veterans, coaches, that are involved with the people in the group. So, so it's a little bit different. Usually when I'm speaking to employers and HRs and such, the majority of the group doesn't have much exposure to military. And so I spent a lot of time on the basics of, basic military information. This is going to be a little bit different because we're going to talk about some issues with veteran employment. What can we do as, coaches, supporters, staff, even fellow veterans, I think, in this process. And let me move my thing to the top here. There we go. So, so why do we have this continual focus on veteran employment? Because we'll talk the statistics here in just a bit, and you might be surprised that we still keep banging the drum on, veteran employment. Well, veterans still continue to report underemployment, and we'll talk about what underemployment is a little bit later because it's different than unemployment, and it's still a problem as veterans transition to the civilian workforce. That part is not changing. Also, really important fact, as the veteran population continues to decline, the gap in understanding between veterans and non-veterans or those with no military experience is growing. And here's some statistics for my friends who like the statistics. So the VA does a population projection model. And their latest model is projecting that the veteran population is going to go from 20.8 million in 2015 to 12 million in 2035. So obviously we have a decline in veteran population. A lot of that is attributed to our older veterans passing away. So eventually we will stabilize as long as, the military kind of stays on their same plan of how many people we bring in, and then of course people will leave. Right now, the statistics show that we're at about 18.8 million veterans, which is roughly 7.5% of the population. So 7.5% of the American population. Now, obviously, that's going to vary by state. There's certain states that have a higher population. For example, Ohio is the 6th largest in veteran population. Texas, Florida, California, they're at the top of the list. So our numbers are declining, and because of that, there's going to be a gap in understanding, which means we need to make an effort to understand each other, right? So veterans need to learn to understand the civilian side, and civilians need to make an effort to understand where the veterans are coming from. The last point is why we still focus on veteran employment is finding meaningful, and I bolded the word meaningful, work post-military service is still a focus and a concern for veterans in career transition. And I know a lot of the folks in this group have worked with veterans before. I have a lot of veteran friends. I talk to a lot of them in transition. It is a big concern because they are used to having a purpose higher than themselves. In the military, you have a purpose that is higher than you alone. And when they transition out, they go from this team mentality, everything's about we, and now they have to be concerned about themselves. And they have to be able to market themselves as individuals. And I think Dennis is kind of smiling. He's a little on my screen, but it's a challenge. I'm only, I'm going on almost 3 years post-retirement. I think Dennis, you're ahead of me, right? It's still a challenge for me sometimes. I still feel awkward on occasion saying I did this, so that is a big concern for veterans is, finding that job or career that is meaningful to them and, really brings them that higher sense of purpose. All right, why am I not? There we go. Okay, so we have a small group here, so we could certainly discuss, and I would love to hear, people's comments. Oh, and I'm not monitoring the chat, by the way, so if anybody is able to, and feel free to jump in and say anything anytime and interrupt me because we are a small group, it's easy. The Institute for Veterans and Military Families did a survey back in 2014. They revisited it in 2016. I've read numerous other studies And they pretty much all point to some top areas of importance of what veterans are looking for in a job. So I would love to hear, maybe from this group, some ideas or thoughts of what you think veterans may be searching for when they are leaving the service and, you know, going on to a civilian career. Jump on in.
I think
Meghan, I read the report, so
Peter.
I'm gonna tell you what I was looking for, but I didn't realize I was looking for. I was looking for autonomy, the ability to really choose what I wanted to do, choose who I wanted to work with, and all that stuff, so I could find that sense of purpose through autonomy. And that took some time. And I know you and I have already talked about that on several occasions.
Yeah. Thanks, Dennis. I think we were in the same boat on that one. No Navy pun intended. Oh man, I got jokes too. You won't be inviting me back for that, will you?
No, I think that bars or that gives you an extra ticket back. For me, I think it was a responsibility, you know, and I don't think I recognized it, but thinking about some of the jobs I had when I first got out, I was, you know, looking for that sort of that managerial role within those companies, so that I could, you know, kind of work my way up that structure and manage other people and manage projects.
Yeah, so you're kind of looking for, hey, I've got all this skill and all these skills and all this knowledge that I've earned over the years in leadership, and I want to go somewhere and use that, and I want to progress, right? You want to keep, like we know in the military is going to happen, right? We're going to do a job, we're going to do it well, and then we're going to get recognized, and move up. Thanks, Sean. Who else? Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Similarly, along those lines of leadership growth. So going from enlisted, getting a college degree in medicine, and so going in straight into a managerial position, the leadership is different compared to, well, I mean, you still have teamwork in the service, and you get out and you are it. They're pretty much like, there you go, handle it.
Yeah, figure it out on your own, right?
Right. So I really wanted that mentorship, leadership growth. Like, teach me how to be a leader. And really, there wasn't anybody there to do that. They were just kind of like, figure it out.
Yeah.
You're the manager now. Here you go.
Thanks, Rose.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what the study said. And again, many studies, they point to similar things. If you read another one, these might not be the top 3, they might be in the top 5, but they're fairly consistent. You know, I think, yeah, Sean, you were talking about the opportunities to use your skills and abilities, right? And you know, leadership is a skill and ability, honestly. Compensation and pay, and it's really fair compensation and pay. Again, we are very transparent in the military. We know exactly how much you're going to make for everything. And you know, in the civilian sector, you know, I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact, about salary. Nobody wants to talk about it because some people want to protect their salary. You know, other people don't want to admit maybe they're not getting paid as much. You know, but veterans really indicate they just want fair compensation and pay. You know, it's not so much that they're looking for becoming millionaires, although there are some that are wanting to be millionaires, and that's fine. But just fair comp and pay. And the last one was the meaningfulness of the job. And I think that's what Dennis was alluding to in the idea of autonomy and finding that purpose. But again, if you research, you know, what are veterans looking for in a job, you know, this study will come up that IVMF did, as well as numerous other surveys that are done, and they're all very similar. Any questions so far or other comments? Okay. All right, so let's talk about some current and historical employment data. So what's going on right now? So May unemployment for veterans was 9.1%, which sounds really high, but of course we are in, you know, the phases of a pandemic. So this is to be expected. It was actually 11.8% in April. The 9.1 is actually compared to non-veterans was 13.3. So we're actually doing better than the general civilian population as veterans. However, if you look at 2019, it was 3.1%. And for those that don't know, that's the lowest it's been in 19 years. So 2019 was a fantastic year for veteran unemployment. And it was also consistently lower than the non-veteran data. So that's good. It means, to me, it means a lot of the effort that's going on and has been going on since basically 9/11 is helping. But there is still a problem with veteran underemployment. So, that's a concern, and it goes back to what we talked about, just what veterans were looking for: opportunities to use skills and knowledge, opportunities for growth, this type of information. So what is underemployment? That's basically when a worker's not using those skills, education, and their availability to do work. And this is a constant, I would say this is a constant theme in veterans I speak to who are struggling. Dennis is going up and down, yes, with employment, because for a lot of reasons we'll get to in a little bit. But I think as coaches, support, whatnot, there's some things to be aware of as it pertains to underemployment that I want to let you guys know about. So there's two main types. And this is from, if you go down to that report, thebalance.com, they quote the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. There's two main types. It's visible and invisible. Visible is just basically people not working as many hours as they could work. So say you want to work 40 hours a week full time, they don't have enough hours for you, and you're only working 25 hours. That's visible underemployment. Companies, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they can track that data. What's a lot harder to capture is the invisible underemployment. And that is where people are not using their knowledge, skills, and abilities, their education, to work at the level that they could be working at. And I put an asterisk there because this is often where veterans fall, in the invisible underemployment realm. And the problem with that is you can't really track it. The only way you can track it is surveys. And this is where we get a lot of the information on the surveys that we do on veteran unemployment, is the question of, are you being employed to your fullest capability? And a lot of times the answer is no. And there's another category called those marginally attached to the labor force. And there's a few different types in there. Discouraged workers, that's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls them. That's, they want to work, they're available, but they've given up looking. So they're not really tracked per se. And they're called discouraged workers, and that's considered underemployed. Veterans may be in that category, as well as, let's see, get them all right. Unemployed after so long they don't get tracked anymore. They actually call those, if they haven't looked in the last 4 weeks, they're considered those marginally attached to the labor force. Again, that could be veterans as well. They can fall in that category. And then there's those who want to work full time but live below the poverty level. That's called the working poor. And that could be also some of our younger veterans getting out. They did a one term get out, and they're working at a minimum wage job, and they're below the poverty level. So just to be aware of what underemployment is as we talk about veteran underemployment. The biggest one you'll probably see is that invisible, where they're just not being used, or employed for their knowledge, skills, abilities, and education. All right, so here's a few trends. So veterans typically, they'll often take the first job that, either they're offered or the one that fits that safety and security blanket, over something that really fits their purpose. Because again, we're used to safety and security, that paycheck that comes twice a month, we know when to expect it, and they need to keep that safety and security going. So they'll take that job, maybe they have family or, obligations. But then, this often results in underemployment, right? They're not really working at the full ability that they could be. Another employment trend is, veterans say companies advertise as veteran friendly, but there's really no programs to support veterans at the company. Just curious, has anybody experienced that or heard of that? I know I have, but I work in this space, so I hear it a lot. Any comments on that? Veteran friendly employees, or employers? No, nobody. Yeah, so a lot of times companies will advertise, on their website, we hire veterans. So I'll ask, okay, great. So what do you do? Well, we hire veterans. Okay, so that's awesome. Then what? What happens after you hire them? Well, they go to work. Okay, do you have a onboarding process? Do you have a mentor program? Do you have an employee resource group, that helps them assimilate into your organization? This isn't actually really unique to veterans, but you will find, veteran employee resource groups at a lot of the bigger companies.
Megan, I talked to actually a number of employers just through what we do. And there was an initiative, and I won't say the name of the employer, but I will say that they had thrown out as an organization like a target number that they were trying to hit with the number of veteran hires. And what they discovered in my conversations with them is that was like one of the worst things that they could do, because they were just shoving vets in jobs randomly and had no concept of like what service was and how to match someone's service to what they were now doing, or even any kind of HR consideration of how to make their corporate client culture ready to receive, all those vets. And so it was like, you talk about the underemployment of vets, like that's literally how some of those things happen, is that, we get this veteran friendly environment, we're going to hire this many vets, but they're not really doing veterans any services, because just like anybody who you get placed into organization to hit a number as opposed to say, let's find a good fit for you. They ran into a lot of those issues. So. Yeah.
And that, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the preparing the organization to bring that employee on. In this case, it's the veteran demographic. Yeah, it's not like you said, it's you're taking a square peg and shoving it in a round hole, and it doesn't fit exactly, so I'm just going to jam it in there, right? And hope it works. Definitely it happens, and I think it needs more thought, right? It needs more HR really to it. It needs HR is what it needs. But yeah, that does happen. So
it needs a larger HR navigator footprint.
Yeah, right.
And I think one of the things that was highlighted to me once was trying to find a veteran committed company versus a veteran friendly company.
Yeah.
And, because a veteran committed company is one that actually has those programs. And it really got cemented to me when I was a Veterans Day speaker in Cincinnati, and I had somebody come up to me and tell me, hey, our company hired 1,000 veterans last year. I'm like, that's awesome. What are they doing right now? Silence.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what do you? No, really, in terms of how many have advanced, how many are still there, how many. He knew how many people got hired, but had no idea where they were, what they were doing, or anything else. And
a lot of employers don't like to talk turnover because they don't want to admit that costs money, and that's not a good way to do business either. So they just go, oh well, people leave it. They come and they leave, but you can actually, there is, and Dennis, you may be, because I know you dabble in some HR stuff. There's formulas to this. And you start showing these employers and they're like, no, I don't want to look, no. So, but yeah, there's definitely some concern. There's a lot of issues with that, veteran friendly, we'll to do it in the air quotes. And the last one is that veterans still report difficulty in communicating KSAs to potential employers. It's the knowledge, skills, and abilities. There's some great resume support services out there. Where they get in more trouble is in the interview, where they not trouble like bad trouble, where they struggle is trying to explain, that experience in an interview, because again, they're going to revert back to that we, mentality and talk about how great the team was. And the employer, really wants to know, what are you going to bring me? What are you going to do for my company? So that's, practice. And it's uncomfortable to practice, interviewing. It feels awkward, especially when you're working with, veterans who are still serving and they've never done it before. The last job they had was when they were 16, years old. So it's a struggle. And I think, it's still something to be aware of and encourage, because we talk about what do coaches and support staff need to do, encourage, support, to get them to practice these things. So that's just a few, and that's not from a study, by the way, Jake. Those are anecdotal trends. Some good news though. There are more programs now in existence than ever before to augment, the required transition courses that veterans take. As a matter of fact, I had to look it up. We're at about 45,000 nonprofits that are related to veterans. And I don't have an exact number of how many are specifically career transition, but 44% are public societal nonprofits and 22% are human services. So somewhere in there, these are programs, or these are organizations that are related to, helping veterans transition. So while they might not be specific career, it might, there's all sorts. So that's just nonprofits. Now there's government programs, both federal and state. There are for-profit organizations that help veterans with transition assistance. So more than ever, there is a program out there that fits people. Also, there's a new focus emerging in the veteran transition space, that the concept of military transition is more than finding a job. For a long time, it has been all about the job, the job, and that's it. That's what TAP prepared you for. That's, you get your resume assistance. It is now becoming a more holistic approach. We are not, I think, there in all the programs yet, but I think we're going in the right direction, which is a positive thing. And the last point is that veterans are seemingly more open to these transition services. Seeing a lot more of the vets who are, 2 to 3 years out. I call them the younger veterans, just because I'm retired. That are like, this is awesome, I love this, versus maybe some others who are a little more like, no, I'm not gonna take the services, I'm gonna do this on my own. So those are some good news stories about veteran employment. So supporting veterans in the employment process, what can you do? I think number one, and I think this group is probably of the mindset that we understand that it's a major life change. It's not just looking for a job, it's not just a career change. It is an entire life change when you transition out of the military. Again, I think that's great that we have a more holistic approach to it, as for those that work in the veteran transition space. And I tell people, okay, it took years to create a sailor, soldier, Marine, airman, Coast Guardsman, right? You go to boot camp or your transition course, that's just the beginning, right, of transitioning into the service. That kind of makes you the bare bones model. But then you go to more school and you go to more it takes some time to really become, some people say brainwashed, some people say assimilated into your service. So on the flip side, when you're leaving, it's not going to be you snap your fingers and, I'm a civilian now and everything's, easy. It is a transition process the other direction. And I actually tell people, it's a lifelong transition. We're constantly changing and evolving, and to make that mind shift, that mental mind shift, to allow yourself the grace to know that it is a process. Of course, understand veterans might be nervous, very, about asking for help. Some people are really good at asking for it. I know I ask for help all the time. Dennis has the text messages to prove it. But not every, I will tell you, this is a lesson learned the hard way. I transitioned out in 2005 after 8 years of service and the Naval Academy. So I was about, 12 and a half years-ish or so. I didn't want to ask for help from anybody. I wanted to go it alone. I wanted, maybe my husband helped a little bit. But he was doing his own career transition. We transitioned out the same month. So that was not probably a smart idea. But I didn't really want to reach out and ask for help because I thought I'm strong and I'm smart and I can do this, on my own, not realizing that there was help out there. And that's why it's been such a passion when I returned to active duty. It was a passion of mine when I was still serving to mentor my sailors about it. Getting out of the military is not a bad word. People kind of treat it like, oh my gosh, don't say it out loud. People are going to think you're a quitter. Well, we all have to leave at some point. My take is, why not always be preparing, right? Just always thinking about it. But anyways, that's why I'm so passionate about this. And the next thing is, understand there's not a one size fits all. Absolutely not a one size fits all. Everybody's experience is their own personal journey, and what works for one may or may not work for someone else. And that's why I think it's wonderful that there's so many options out there. The hard part is helping people navigate the options because there are so many. And the last thing is about knowing where to find the resources. So we're going to talk just about a few. Again, there are thousands and thousands of resources out there. So please don't take this as the only ones or these are the best ones. There's a lot. And as Dennis asked, I added more because I was just going to hit a few, but the first one I put up there is LinkedIn. And the reason I put that is this is quickly becoming the platform of choice for veterans to use in their in the employment piece of it. They are teaching this in transition class. But they just touch on it. They don't get to spend a ton of time talking about LinkedIn. It's sort of like just learning the beginning of how to drive a car. The system can do a lot more than what they cover. So I put my profile up there because I want to connect with everyone here from today. Dennis and I are already connected. So please, 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 please connect with me on LinkedIn. I actually had to look up some stats again because I'm a nerd, but there are 133 million American users on LinkedIn, and about 40% check it daily. So that is a pretty powerful tool. There are veterans groups on LinkedIn, both employment and non-employment related, believe it or not. Some are just more networking, social, which, is part of the employment, process. But again, this is something where, veterans may be a little hesitant about using. I love the like, comment, share. That's what I tell people when they're first starting is if you see something interesting, like it, make a comment, and then share it on your own, your own page. A lot of veterans go, oh, I have to come up with all this content and sound smart and do this. And I'm like, no. Just start engaging. So I think, encouraging veterans to engage on LinkedIn because it is all about the network. The next one is the Veteran Affairs Veteran Employment Center. I put this one on there because they have a lot of resources that veterans will often leave on the table because they might have had a bad experience with the medical side of the house. The medical piece is its own process. It's its own department or division. I kind of equate it to if you were in a command somewhere, your unit, and you had the training department was super awesome, but then the personnel department was terrible. Doesn't mean the training department's not super awesome. That's how I equate it. So again, look at it for its own individual resource. They have, they're the ones that they'll help with employment, employment assistance, resumes, vocational rehab. If it's a disabled veteran, VOC rehab is a program. They have a lot of great resources. I really encourage people to at least find out where theirs is, have a call. If they hate the people there, then call another one. They're there to support the veterans. It is a benefit veterans have earned. But sometimes they don't make that distinguishing, mark from the medical side of the house. The next one is service-specific programs. I put Soldier for Life and Marine for Life. Unfortunately, the other services don't have them yet. I would imagine they're trying to catch up. But these are actual service-sponsored programs. So if you Google Airmen for Life, you're going to come up with the Wounded Warrior Program for the Air Force, which is different. They're just overall support services. They have transition assistance, employment assistance, you know, all that great stuff. The fourth one is that IVMF. Again, great opportunity for education and credentialing, both for active duty and veterans. So that's a great resource. And also they do a ton of studies, which is where I look for a lot of my data, because they do a lot of employment studies, all types of studies as they relate to veterans. Hire Heroes USA, again, free job, search assistance. They've been around since 2011. So in the realm of kind of this newer generation of helping veterans, it's a little, I guess, older. Great, they with the Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of opportunity there. Corporate America Supports You is one that a lot of people haven't heard of before. What intrigues me about them is they're a nonprofit, and they actually started in 2004 supporting military spouses first. Then they figured out that there was a need in the veteran space, and in 2010 they started working with veterans. So and these are all no cost to veterans as well. So these are either nonprofits or government programs. Then I just put a couple mentoring programs on there. You may have heard of Veterati, and ACP is American Corporate Partners. Veterati is a little looser. There's no training requirements for Dennis is laughing. And I call them looser because there's no training required. There's no experience required as a mentor. So like if I want to become a mentor for Veterati, I just sign up. They don't ask me what my, they ask you what your experience is so you can get connected, but there's not a minimum requirement, whereas ACP has minimum requirements for their mentors. And also ACP is a 1-year commitment versus Veterati is, you can do one call and that's it. ACP is a little bit longer. The last one is DOD Skillbridge, and I'll spend a couple minutes talking about that. This went way longer than I meant. I'm sorry. Skillbridge. I'm just curious, raise hands or whatever. Has everybody heard of DOD Skillbridge? No, just Dennis. Well, I know Dennis because we're in the same space, but okay. So DOD Skillbridge actually started in 2014, believe it or not. When I first heard about it and went, wait a minute, I retired in 2017. Why didn't I know about this? Was not very well advertised, is still not super well advertised. But it's basically a program for DOD service members to do civilian work experience in a certain industry via apprenticeship, internship during their last 180 days of service. So it's approved by the DOD, except for the Coast Guard. Make sure everybody knows that, except for the Coast Guard. But basically it's permissive duty. So the service member goes on permissive duty, orders from their organization to a industry partner that they have an agreement with to basically test the waters, for lack of a better word. Now, ideally, hopefully that organization will end up offering that veteran a job. It doesn't always happen, and it's not a requirement. So the company is not required to offer a job. If they're supposed to make an effort to, but I have heard of people not getting job offers. So that is sort of a real high level, quick, what Skillbridge is.
There's something like that going on at Benning right now. That's actually, we're applying to be part of their Skillbridge system.
Okay.
That is, it may not be the exact program that the DOD is offering, but it's very similar to that one. And, it's an application type program, and it's up to, I want to say 12 weeks, I believe, in that program of training where you can be either, pipeline for a job or something, job skill, something like that. So I've seen that active.
Yeah. It's starting to gain traction. I mean, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's as well known as by this point, 6 years later, it probably should, but it's starting to get there. this map is just from their website, just to kind of give you a snapshot. And I pulled this off for another brief for Ohio. So, but you can see where, based on the roughly 250,000 people that transition out every year, where they're going. And this is, you know, I just captured this side. But if you go to that link that's on this page, and I'll send this out too. I apologize. I was making a few last minute tweaks today, but I'll send it to Sean so he can share it. You can go to their website and see, you know, where in my state, or how many are transitioning in my state. So you can see, and where all the purple is, that's, you know, 5,000 plus in fiscal year 18. So yeah, Ohio, Detroit, or Michigan, yeah. Usually if there's no, you know, the more programs they have, or they're going home, depending on, you know, the kind of support they need. All right, so we're at the end finally. So supporting veteran employment, key takeaways. So veterans is just that reminder that career transition is a life change, not just a job change. And I probably should add, you know, it's always change. You know, I feel like it's all, if you can make the mindset change, that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to want to do something else. You are not stuck in this forever. But that can be a challenge for some people. Coaches and staff support, and educate. Again, knowing, you know, you might not have the answer of the resource somebody needs, you know, as it relates to employment or anything, but knowing where to go to find resources, or, you know, talking to people who may have those resources is huge. And that might just be the right resource they need to find what, you know, what works for them at that point in their life. The last thing I have on there is 80%. And I'm just curious if anybody might know what 80% means as it relates to employment. Not specifically veteran employment, but just employment.
Is that the unlisted jobs that aren't necessarily posted on job boards or anything like that?
You're close. You're close. Any other guesses? That was close. If I had like candy rewards, I'd give you one, Sean. 80% is kind of the round number-ish. It might be a little higher or lower, of jobs that people get because of their network. So basically they're saying about 20% are cold calls or cold applications. This is I think the last key takeaway with veterans is network. And it doesn't mean going out to networking events all the time and, you know, all that other stuff. It is cultivating meaningful relationships with people. Dennis might not be the guy that gets me the job or the whatever that I'm looking for right now, but we have cultivated a relationship, and he might know somebody or hear of something that makes that connection for me, because we've created, you know, a meaningful relationship. And that's another real key part that I see veterans struggle with, that I struggled with myself. You know, obviously I mentioned my first transition, even in retirement, you know, it was a whole new ball game. I had to learn networking in a little bit different way. 80%.
Yeah, Megan, you bring up a great point. Two great points. One, I got a note from somebody last night that I did some work with 6 years ago. And he reached out to me on LinkedIn. He said, "Hey, you're in the space that I want to get into. We've worked together. You know who I am. Can you take a look at your network, see who's in the leadership development space in San Diego, because that's where I want to end up." And I said, "Yeah, sure, man. Absolutely." So, and we're going to talk, we're going to have a conversation tomorrow. But actually, to your point, being okay with asking for help, you know, literally hitting that send button on that private message or that email, it takes a lot of effort. But you know what? Military men and women will absolutely bend over backwards to help each other. So be okay with asking for help.
Yeah, I mean, veterans, you know, we support each other a ton, and there's a lot of, you know, non-veterans. I mean, I'm floored. Here I am in Northwest Ohio. as it pertains to Ohio, we don't have the highest veteran population, but wow, what an incredible support network. I've been here for 6 years now, so I've been able to cultivate these relationships over the years to when, retirement came along, people were asking, what are you going to do? What are you interested? How can I help? I heard a lot of that. And if I didn't say anything, or, if I didn't say, well, I'm interested in teaching, the opportunity to adjunct at one of the universities would have never happened. So I just think it's an important thing to also impress upon veterans is 80% of employment, job offerings come from the network, from the relationships. So focus. Resumes are important, interview skills are important, but I don't think at the expense of your network, cultivating that. So anyways, I talked way longer than I thought. I apologize.
Not at all.
I enjoy it.
Meghan, thank you. No, this is incredibly helpful and a great group, because I know that everybody on here is like totally keyed into this veteran employment thing, especially the underemployment thing. So I kind of want to open it up a little bit to, our panel of experts that we have here on the call to hear from you guys. Anything you'd like to emphasize or maybe ask Meghan to kind of respond to, or, something you've noticed even in this transition that you have been going through or others have gone through that you think would be beneficial for the group?
And for me too. I love feedback. So.
Well, I wanted to say thanks for sharing your perspective, and I have to depart the pattern to jump on another Zoom call in a couple of minutes. But a book recommendation for every transitioning veteran: The Proximity Principle by Ken Coleman. I like to say he's part of the Dave Ramsey tribe. And he talks about the two things that you have to do, right? The things that you need to know and the people you need to hang out with.
Yeah.
And spend time figuring out what you need to know. And then once you figure out what you need to know, spend time with the people you need to get to know so you can go do what you want to do.
Brilliant.
And I found that to be one of the most helpful books on transition that I've had the opportunity to read over the past 5 years. So
Can you repeat the name of that, please?
yeah, The Proximity Principle. And I, believe it or not, I got turned on to it through a random Zoom call that I got introduced to. It was with the Harvard Kennedy School. I was completely out of my comfort zone, and somebody said, yeah, this is the best book to read. And I'm like, you know what? If somebody from Harvard tells me to read something, let me check it out. So I had the growth mindset. I was like, this is amazing. And now I recommend it to everybody. So anyway, but Meghan, thanks. Jake, thanks. Sean, thanks. It's great to see everybody, and more to follow.
So yeah, thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, that was a great emphasis of what you said there at the end about the network, Meghan. I think that definitely validated, kind of that thought. I'm sure everybody else, can have a similar experience. Any other thoughts from our group here, our illustrious group of all-stars that we got going here? Anything you'd like to emphasize or add to, or even a question?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. There we go.
Kyle.
All right. It's a little delayed on my headset. Yeah, so you had mentioned something about LinkedIn, and it's totally underutilized. When you said commenting and getting into the circles, it's the easiest space that anybody can use to get into, especially professional networks. It's becoming a little less like just business friendly and still building relationships on there. And a really key figure that I saw was less than 10% of all users on LinkedIn even comment maybe once a week. And you watch, and I've watched personally, from people that I've worked with, companies that I've worked with, myself, and then, just other watching in the space, like how fast they'll take off is like once they start actually engaging with other people more than a good post or anything else. You actually have to make meaningful contributions, just like any other network. So following it up with a question or using that to answer somebody else's question, linking them to the resource. I mean, it takes like 10 minutes a day to jump on there and jump through comments, like search for it in a hashtag because people are using them like crazy on LinkedIn. And then just, follow somebody who you'd like to emulate, somebody, maybe in your network who's on par, and maybe drag some other people up who are underneath you, not beneath you. And it's paid dividends in making more connections than I've ever thought. More so than Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anywhere else. LinkedIn is it is a powerhouse, and it's still underutilized. So for anybody who says they don't have time, I can do it in 10 minutes a day. Just go in and comment somewhere. My activities since the COVID thing's been way down, but it honestly, if you don't start doing it, because you'll be able to make just further connections. Kind of like when you go to a camp or someplace like this where you meet people from all over the nation. This is the easiest way. That your sphere of influence in LinkedIn is far greater than that on Facebook, which is usually more localized. So you might find an opportunity in Montana if you live in New York, or eventually it might lead to that. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and it's I would agree it's underutilized in the employment business space, but the opportunity is there, and that's what I love. Is if you want it, like you said, 10 minutes a day, 50, you work it into your schedule. Now I can't do it in 10 minutes a day because I go down every rabbit hole, because so I'm naturally curious. That's what I say. And
that's how you term it. I term it.
Some people say nosy. I say naturally curious.
I'm gonna start using that one instead. Yeah, I'm the same way, because I'm like, oh, what's Jason been up to, and then I'll just go through all his stuff instead of just what's current right now. As far in the contribution space, it could be simple too. Besides, I think it takes from commenting to get up to posting on there, and I was guilty of this before, is trying to project your intellect and knowledge. And veterans are I watch them do it because I did it too. They're very quick to, and not in a bad way. It's just they don't know any better. Is to oh, look at all of this experience I have, instead of using it to create some kind of, and I hate the term creating value, but without contributing to everybody else where it's useful information. It's usually just knowledge spewing. And so that's something I would tell anybody to be very careful of, because I've done it. It's until somebody said, hey, that's cool, a bunch of this stuff, but how are you going to make it useful for somebody? And I'm like, oh, so that's definitely another thing that if I see somebody doing it, I'll just kind of sidebar them on it, because it definitely doesn't get any engagement. And it's all about engagement, and that engagement really does, it absolutely works. It's a miracle how that social media platform can actually just create more opportunity than ever. And now you don't have to get up and go to Luby's at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Friday to your network, which is one of mine. You can actually expand that out a little bit more, and have more conversations than just the guy who's sitting there keeping you engaged. You can just disengage from that and go to chat with somebody else.
That's great.
Yeah. I love the networking topic, just because I was so terrified of it when I left in 2005 and realized the importance of it. And I didn't tell the story in the whole thing, but I mentioned my husband and I left at the same time. And, my plan of action was, I'm going to use my credentials, my qualifications. I'm going to wow them, right? With whatever application I fill out. I don't know anybody there, but they're going to be so wowed by everything I've accomplished that they're going to want to hire me. My husband got out and went, I want this job at this place doing this, and I'm calling my network. And this was pre-LinkedIn, so it was actually called his network, and he got the job he wanted at the company he wanted. He's still there to this day. This was, 2005. And I credit that to the network. Obviously, he was very laser focused. I didn't have as much focus, but the network, he picked up the phone and he called the guys, and there wasn't really any women in his network that were in positions to help him, but the gentleman that he knew that said, call me when you're leaving active service, he said, I'm calling him. They said call him, so I'm going to do it. And it panned out. It panned out for him. And I always say, mine was don't do it my way, do it his way. So the networking was a challenge back then. And even in retirement, it was a little bit of a challenge, take the uniform off. How do I talk about myself in these networking settings? So I love to talk about networking with especially the hesitant veterans, or the ones that are, you got some that are they're just natural, and they can do it. And there's a lot that are, it's for me, it was stressful, to go to things. So even sometimes I still go, I'm an introvert, I'm staying home. but I understand the value of it more now. So
It's important, man. Getting that network going. You guys are all really great at that. And being here, I mean, on a Thursday at 3:00 is an important. That's an indicator that you care about developing that network and learning. So appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much. We're at our time. Meghan, you have been absolutely wonderful and incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and and being so generous as well to put your information up on the slide. So, if you guys would like to reach out to Meghan again and kind of continue to learn from her expertise and her experience, I'm sure she'd be great with that. She wouldn't have put her information up there if she wasn't. So thank you again. Our next call, July 16th, 3 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And, send Sean or I feedback if you got any thoughts or, continued ideas on how we can, keep making these calls go to the next level. We would love to hear from you guys. Mitchell, thanks for hanging on the whole time. Rose, great to see your face here. Marie, we never really heard from you. Are you here, or were you just sitting there with your screen up pretending to contribute?
I'm here, but I was mopping floors just before I got on the call, so I'm really not presentable.
Well, we appreciate you being on here with us today. Even if I only get to see your avatar picture, it's a lovely face. So thank you for joining us. Kyle, great thoughts, man, at the end. Great coaching and insight on the LinkedIn stuff. Thank you. Sean, anything else? Did we miss anything, bro? Was I, did I include all the details? Did I put it all in? All right, I'm good. All right. Hey, y'all have a wonderful afternoon. Everybody, you guys take care. Have a safe weekend. God bless. We'll see you next time.
thanks, everybody.